Have you ever thought about how all fad diets work for weight loss? Because when you do, you start to notice something pretty interesting in that they all work by doing almost the exact same thing to get you weight loss. And that reason is why fad diets just don't work for long term weight loss. Sure, you might lose some weight in the short term, but when you stop doing the fad diet, you're gonna get a pretty big weight rebound until you understand this one thing. So in this video, we're gonna answer 4 big questions about why fad diets just aren't the best. And by the end of this video, you're gonna know what diet is right for you to not just lose weight, but to also keep that weight off long term. If you're new here, welcome, and thanks for spending your time here. My name's Noah, and I've been a full-time personal trainer for the last 5 years after graduating from my bachelor's of kinesiology. And I'm just trying to cut through all the bullshit that's out there in the fitness industry and simplify things so that you can lose weight in the easiest way possible. And if that sounds good to you, let's get right into it. Here's the 4 big questions we're gonna use to break down why fad diets just don't work. What exactly are the downsides? Why do they usually result in you gaining that weight back? How do they work and why are they similar? And what diet is right for you? And then at the end of the video, I'm gonna give you the recommendations that I give to my clients. All right, so what are the downsides of doing a fad diet? And there's pretty much 2 big downsides when it comes to weight loss specifically. First is they are just incredibly restrictive. And that might sound like a positive to you at first because the more you restrict yourself, the faster you lose weight, right? But here's the problem. It just isn't sustainable to do long term. And you might argue that it isn't supposed to be long term. It's just supposed to be something done in the short term for short weight loss, right? But do you want to be in an endless yo yo cycle forever? Let's think about the carnivore diet for a second, where you're only eating meat. How long do you think you're going to be able to live being that restrictive? Or how do you think your gut health is even going to be on that diet? Or keto, sure, it doesn't sound as restrictive as only eating meat, but limiting carb intake is incredibly hard for most people, especially in social settings. So when people get sick of that restrictiveness, they end up going back to what they were doing before they started the fad diet. And that brings us into our second downside, in that they don't teach you proper eating habits. And this is the reason that fad diets end up resulting in weight regain when you stop doing it. Sure, restricting yourself can get you weight loss in the short term, but when you stop doing that fad diet, you're gonna go back to your normal diet. And to put it bluntly, that diet was shit and it wasn't getting you to where you wanted to be. So what do you think is gonna happen when you go back to eating your shitty normal diet? Yeah, you end up putting the weight right back on and you get back to where you started or worse. Because if you want to keep the weight off long term, you need to make slow changes to your diet that you can actually sustain. But people don't like to hear that it's going to take a bit of real work. They would rather keep looking for quick fixes and be in a yo yo cycle for decades than take a couple of years of small changes to never have to yo-yo diet again. But how are all these seemingly different looking fad diets doing the same thing for weight loss? Well, let's use 2 completely different looking fad diets to prove this point. We're gonna use keto and then we're gonna use high carb, low fat, because on paper, they look like they're doing something completely different. So keto is basically cutting out all carbs from your diet to get your body into ketosis. Although most people never make it to ketosis because it takes a few weeks and people end up eating carbs before then. But that's beside the point. Then high carb, low fats is basically the opposite, and it's exactly what it sounds like. You're eating higher carbs and limiting your fat intake. Now, on paper, these diets look like they're doing 2 completely different things, right? But if you're savvy, you might have noticed something. And that's these fad diets are just trying to limit your overall calorie intake. Because at the end of the day, that's what all of them do. Because the only way to lose weight is a calorie deficit. Don't believe me? Comment your favorite fad diet in the comments below, and I'll use the same logic to debunk it. Now, I'm not gonna say there isn't certain health benefits to some of these diets for certain people. But when it comes to weight loss specifically, they all work by cutting something out to create a calorie deficit. Plain and simple. Because the only way to lose weight is a calorie deficit. Now that I've been bashing all these diets, you're probably wondering, what diet is right for you? But here's the thing. I don't even really like to use the term diet with my clients because it implies that it's something temporary. So instead, I like to say we're making nutritional changes or refer to it as your food intake. It's a small change, but it can drastically change how you view food. That said, I'm going to give you the three big nutritional changes that I'll make with my clients that I just find work better in the long term than any diet. It's not the most exhaustive list, but it's a great place to get you started. But first is the mindset shift that we have to have when it comes to your nutrition. And that mindset shift is adding things into your nutrition rather than taking them out and limiting it. Because when most people are eating the right foods most of the time, they're going to have a very difficult time overeating. And this small mindset shift still lets you have those things that you like to indulge in once in a while without feeling like you're ruining all of your progress, which is a much better place to be in for long term success. Now, that said, the first big change that we're gonna make is adding protein into every meal because protein is the most important macronutrient that almost everyone is under eating. And it does two big things. One, it's going to help you build muscle, which is a cheat code for weight loss. And I talked about that in one of my past videos, which I'll leave linked at the end of this one. And two, it's going to keep you much more full than carbs or fats do. And when you're just starting out, just forget about the ideal ranges. Is there an ideal range? Yes, absolutely. But when you're just starting out, just adding a bit of protein into every meal is a great way to get you started because small changes like this are what add up to big results in the long term. The second big change that we're gonna make is adding more fiber into your life. And no, it isn't gonna give you the shits like some people think it does. But when you start to focus on just adding more fiber in, you start to gravitate to more whole foods because you're not gonna find much, if any, fiber in things like pizza, chocolate, ice cream, or any other ultra processed food. But you are going to find it in things like bananas, beans, whole grains, etc. And fiber is the most important thing for your gut health, which can drastically improve your energy levels. And when you're eating more whole foods instead of ultra processed foods, you're going to stay fuller for longer for way less calories, which is going to make staying in a calorie deficit so much easier. Then the third biggest nutritional change we're going to make is limiting your snacking and limiting your ultra processed food intake. The first two changes that you're going to make will have a big impact on this. But if you make those first two changes, but you're still polishing off a tub of ice cream every night, you're just not going to lose weight. But having a smaller portion every once in a while isn't going to ruin all of your progress. So you don't have to deprive yourself completely. So here's a couple tips that I use with my clients just to limit their snacking. First is just not bringing the snack into your house in the first place. Because if it's not there, you're not going to eat it. But if that's too drastic of a first step, put them in the hardest to reach place in your house. And then put a fruit bowl in an easy to reach place because you're usually going to opt for the easier option. Because most of the time, that added friction is going to stop you from snacking. But like I said, you don't have to stop entirely. Once in a while, with a smaller portion, isn't going to ruin all of your progress. You just don't want to be doing it regularly. Now, I hope you got something valuable from this video. If you did, here's my video on why muscle is a cheat code for weight loss. If you're still here, I really do appreciate you. Thanks for watching. Until next time, peace.